No, everybody else does.
I've got issues, trust me. I've got issues.
Everybody got issues.
Plenty of issues. Yeah, well, those could be good issues. It could be good issues.
You're not honest if you say they don't have issues.
I mean, I know I have issues, but I can't speak for others.
We're live.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the Carbondale Historic Preservation regular meeting this Thursday, September 7th, 2023. Okay, would you please take roll call?
Nick Mission,
Here.
John Williams,
Here.
Heather McDonald. Here. Eric Dowd is absent. Eric Seacrest,
Here.
Kim McGee. Here. Jess Pedersen is absent.
Thank you. Item number 2, approval of August 3rd, 2023 meeting minutes. Are there any questions, comments, concerns regarding the previous meeting's minutes?
I make a motion, we approve last month's minutes.
Okay,
Seconded.
terrific. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Meeting minutes from the previous meeting are approved. Moving on to item number 3. Citizens present not on the agenda. I see citizens present.
And we're definitely not on the agenda.
Yeah, saves time. My name is Richard Votero. And I'm a resident of downtown Carbondale.
Could you state your address?
Let's see, 75 South 3rd Street. So I've been a 18-year resident, refugee from the Front Range where I was born. And Carbondale reminds me of my dad's small town in Montana, who as kids, we would go up there and there was tremendous historic flavor. They even had a festival called the Festival of Nations, where all the nationalities who are little enclaves around the whole little town, coal miners and different people. And they would have a Festival of Nations where each nationality presented, you know, their food and clothes and dances. And so it was wonderful. So I, got a sense for history. And I have a sense for history in Carbondale also. And, Carbondale is a town of a couple anomalies or more. One being we have 133 corridor, which is modern suburban America coming right on in, strong. And we have our downtown and how precious that is. Ask Glenwood Springs what happened to their downtown with Highway 82. It's highly unfortunate. Mountain tourist town. For our town, we're still in the place where we can preserve the historic nature of our downtown. So you know what this is coming to, and that's my complete dislike for the new Forest Service building, plopping in a modern government building into our downtown. And I'm trusting that there's a better plan. So there's a lot of circumstances that caused the elongation of the process of putting a new government building in. And the citizens got a bit behind. While the pandemic was going on, the government is probably working on their plan and the citizens are dispersed. And so now, once we've come back together, we discovered that this is pretty serious. I would call it an intrusion into our historic downtown. They require new space. I understand that. They are historically here. That's how we got Cypress Park. And the Forest Service started in Colorado, the on the grounds piece of it over near Mam Creek. The administrative piece was in Washington, DC, and they wanted to get out into the field and start managing trees and different things. Water, not so much. Thank you. And so we have some historic flavor in this area about the beginnings of the Forest Service. And my wish would be to see those historic buildings restored and utilized, and then what other space they may require, we can figure out how to build that for them. I know that's a serious crank in a government process, but it's a money saver. And I think our town will be happy that we retain that portion of the Forest Service for scale and historic value, and that we were able to use the citizen involvement process in having that take place.
Thank you, sir.
Hi there. Patty left on 2500 Highway 133. And so we proposed in the past Plan B, an enhanced plan for the Forest Service, asking that they would shift their building from the position that they have proposed to a 90-degree angle, which would allow the buildings to remain in place and the trees. We are tree huggers, and I liken myself to Forrest Gump, going, let's just save some trees. And so that brings me very innocently wanting to, promote the idea of maintaining the buildings and the trees that are on the property. And then most recently, I feel like dancing around with this particular idea that I'm about to share with you. I've spoken to a Pitkin County Commissioner, Steve Childs, about this idea, and he thinks it's a really wonderful proposal. If we could find a piece of property on 133 that would be able to hang, to hold the footprint of the building that's being proposed by the Forest Service, we would be able to accomplish a number of goals. We would be able to expand the size of the park, because now the whole block would be available to the Cypress Park and to the swimming pool and so on, and the buildings could be used. And we could actually sort of try to collaborate with the Forest Service financially because of the benefit that we would be gaining by keeping the buildings, the land and all here in downtown. And then the virtue of moving the Forest Service to 133, if we can find a property that we could purchase and then exchange with them, it would mean that people who are visiting from Montana or wherever they might be coming from can find it more readily on 133 than they can finding their way into downtown. And so we would be serving a lot of purposes, like for everyone. And then also I realized that the Forest Service wouldn't have to replace any trees if by chance there were none. Which is ridiculous for me to say that to you, but you get what I'm saying. There's a lot of levity in my presentation, you could tell, but it's just this like, oh my God moment, because we realized for many, many generations to come, if we expanded the size of Cypress Park and having those buildings present and turning them into, like a chamber resort sort of kind of, whatever they might be, there's so many hundreds of things that they could be used for the pool and for the Cypress Park. And there it is, beginning, middle, and end. Thank you for hearing me. Yeah, and any questions, we have a research team composed of many, many members of the community who, if you want us to be boots on the ground and researching things to help out, we're just wanting to do it. Like I said, it's absolutely in innocence and wishing the very best for the Forest Service, but even more so for the well-being of the community who the Forest Service are a member of. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think I followed Patty at the trustees meeting, and I'm sure some of you are aware that was a sort of a standing room only meeting with a lot of concerned folks. Oh yeah, sure. It's Ross Cribbs, Kribbs, and it's 799 Garfield Avenue here in Carbondale. I'll pick up, I guess, where Patty left off, or just sort of reference Patty and the other ideas that are floating around, and kind of get right to the heart of the matter that I think maybe will resonate with you folks who have a vested interest in and having an opinion about history. We don't need to to talk to you about how important it is to save the pieces of our or the few pieces of our downtown that are available, and to also save the public's input into these processes. If I guess this is as good a place as any to kind of introduce what we've kind of discovered as we've looked into how public opinion was sidestepped, and it was a very very clear sidestepping of public opinion. Any project like this generally gets an environmental assessment, and it's not an environmental assessment is not a huge project, but it does open up official public comment, and that has been sidestepped in this case by Scott Fitzwilliams with his categorical exclusion, and you will have, I think, passed around to you a copy of that exclusion. Basically, that exclusion files this project under the category of a repair and maintenance project. And by doing so, it sidesteps the the environmental assessment process and all opportunity for public input. People are not late to this game. People have not been invited to the table, very deliberately not invited to the table. The Forest Service has said that they had an open house, which they did. The architects were not there. It was already 60% design complete. There was no opportunity to file any sort of official comment. We've asked for their file of official comments and have not received anything. We've received a request to go get a FOIA from them. So following on the following pages behind Scott Fitzwilliams' signed categorical exclusion is the specific exclusion that he refers to. And in this case, it's repair and maintenance of administrative sites. Examples include but are not limited to. So it's putting sort of general ideas, general bounds on this. The projects they're referring to in general: mowing lawns, replacing a roof or storage shed, painting a building, or applying registered pesticides. I would argue that this is sort of a house of cards built on a lawn mowing permit, and in the process has completely sidestepped public opinion and public opportunity. We're not late to the game. We deserve that, and we hope that you as a committee will honor that request and suggest to the trustees or on your own, speaking on your own, that this is something that deserves a look. I'm happy to chat with anybody outside of this. My name and number is available easily. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Diana Alcantara. That's Alcantara. I live at 30 Pinion Lane in Blue Creek Ranch. Been here 15 years. When I first moved here, I lived downtown. I'm a teacher at Carbondale Community School, and I run summer camps for kids and bring the kids into town. I'm in town almost every day. And looking through your agenda here, I so appreciate all the things that you all look at. I had no idea. We have to look at doors and are they sliding? Wow, that kind of thing from a historical preservation perspective. So thank you for thinking that way. As I've looked at the renderings of this new Forest Service building, and I pair that with the information that we've collected, is the reason the building was asked to be moved right to the edge is to make it match the next block and preserve that historical look. So buildings come right up to the sidewalk. But the proposed building is just, it's very long and there's no entrance to the building from the sidewalk. Whereas I look at the next block, which is now La Raza, which has a really cool entrance and a really long building that goes back, runs north-south. And then the next building over is that little office building. Pepino's is there, and they have a great stairway that goes up into a building that runs north-south. What has been approved is a building that goes east-west and is just a wall. And I don't see any historical value or understand how that matches what we have. And it actually opposes what's across the street, which is the post office, which is set back, and then the parking lot is in front of it. So really, my main issue tonight on my mind is the look of the building itself. And I will tell you that some of us had a booth last Friday at First Friday right plop to that corner. And not one single person looked at the rendering that Ross has with him. If you want to look at it, or maybe you've seen it. Everybody said, we're going to get that. They're cutting down the trees for that. We're like, that's where we're at right now. So we've talked to at the town council and the mayor. We came and presented, and we were told it's out to bid. It's too late. So what we did was take the advice given to talk to higher up. So we've talked to Bennett, we've talked to Hickenlooper, and it's interesting. They all say, go back and talk to your, do I have 1 minute? Give me 1 minute. Go talk to your local officials. So it's like everybody's pointing the finger at everybody else. Oh, it's too late. Go talk, and so we go to higher and they come back and say, no, you have power. You here in the community have the power. So that's why we're here, because you also can endorse our enhanced plan, which is asking the Forest Service to rotate the building, to shift it so that the trees are saved, the buildings are saved, that you all are looking after the historical preservation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments from the public? Okay.
I don't see any. We're going to provide a staff update at the end of the meeting regarding the stable building, but I can certainly move that up to this portion if you
That might be appropriate.
want an update, given that we have
We don't want to hold on to.
members of the public here who may not want to sit through some other
Yeah.
items.
We should be mindful of people's time.
So, John, you were at that meeting, so please correct me if my memory is wrong. But your guys' letter was brought up to the trustees at the meeting where the concerns about the trees were also brought up. And so there was a larger conversation. The Forest Service, Kevin Warren, the ranger, was present, kind of presented the project, its status, the design, highlighted some of the back and forth that they had, not only with town staff, but some of the outreach that they had with the community. And after hearing all of that, the trustees provided some feedback, and to kind of summarize their comments, it was a lot along the lines of, although we respect that there's sentimental value in the historic, in the stable building, it doesn't rise to the national level of a historic structure, and so it's not eligible for that. And so when looking at the costs of doing something with that building, whether it's relocating, rehabbing, purchasing, whatever it might be, the trustees kind of weighed the costs of putting money into that structure versus other needs that the town might have, such as the Thompson House. And it became pretty clear that the majority, if not all of the trustees said, if we're going to spend money on preservation needs, the biggest bang for the buck is to put it into the Thompson House and to make sure that that National Register property is safe, withholds, the elements, doesn't fall down, and is able to be used by the public again. And so they kind of looked at that and said, well, that's kind of our preference. And then as the meeting kind of went along, there were some additional comments about, well, could a private citizen come in and say, we'll purchase that structure, we'll take that structure. And the Forest Service said, the pathway for them to, quote unquote, dispose of the asset is easiest if it goes to another governmental entity. So if it's given to, say, the town of Carbondale to use, the town of Carbondale could relocate it onto one of their sites. The Forest Service would still retain ownership of it, but the town of Carbondale would enter into an agreement for all ongoing maintenance of the structure. Kevin Warren didn't really have the specific process for getting rid of that asset and giving it to or selling it to a private individual. but he said it would be significantly more process. At a minimum, they would have to go out to an RFP and allow anybody to quote unquote bid or try to purchase or acquire that property. And so that would take some time, not only with just dealing with federal procurement processes and RFP processes, but the actual timing needed to get that out to bid. And so I believe one member of the public said, you know, we'd love to have it out on our property in Setank. And that kind of led to that conversation. So, you know, after a little bit more of the conversation, it seemed like the trustees kind of doubled down and said, you know, we really think there's a higher and better use of our limited funds on the Thompson house than on the stable building. And so they kind of left it there. A few members, and I think Colin in particular, said, hey, we're still open to considering other options if there's some donor who wants to pay to move the building and the Forest Service is willing and we can find a location. We haven't completely closed the door on that. We just don't want to spend town funds necessarily to relocate the building. So hopefully that's a little bit of a summary. You know, as far as the other aspects, I don't think the trustees really talked about the main Forest Service building. It was really only the stable building, which was in reference to your guys' letter and your request to consider relocating that. Anything I'm missing, John?
Well, a little bit.
Okay.
Make sure your mic is on.
The town's assessment of the cost was kind of way over. I thought I talked it over with Eric Dowd, and we had it more like into the $50,000 range to actually do it upright, and that's the whole thing, interior, moving, and everything. But the where to put it was discussed, and putting it in Soapers Park was discussed, and the trustees really didn't go for any of that because they were basically saying the park's too small already. And the rodeo grounds was the next viable location because it's a stable, a horse stable, and rodeo goes with it, and it is town property. And so that's basically, in my mind, the most viable location for it. So that's kind of where that was at. And the meeting was all aimed at the stable building, but it was kind of the room was packed with people that were objecting to the overall plan of the service, the building itself, not just the stable. So there was more than 120 people in there. The paper quoted 70. I counted a lot more than 120. So anyway, these folks are all about saving, not necessarily postponing or doing anything to change the Forest Service property, other than taking their plan and moving it sideways and butting it up against the swimming pool. And therefore, they're going to dig the same hole and take the same building, but just put it in another location where they don't have to dig up the roots and kill the trees. And then we leave the trees. I think the main thing that I think this group as a whole for the Preservation Commission should at least make a show of hand site or something, tell the trustees that we still are concerned about our main entrance to historical commercial core, to our main historic downtown area. The letter that we wrote was about the stable building. It's kind of an ongoing process, but I think what we need to do is move on to the bigger issue of preserving our downtown entrance, what it looks like. Their plan, well, it's a subjective statement I'm making, but it's ugly. It's terrible as far as entering a historic area. So anyway, I think we should have a show of hands whether the trustees should reconsider their support for this and at least slow it down to where we can get more public input and have the public speak out to it based on this letter, this research that Ross has done. They didn't really go through the proper channels to do their project. And they checked the box that didn't need any public outreach, and therefore they didn't do any public outreach. And obviously 120 people show up on the spur of the moment to come talk to the trustees about it. It obviously needs public outreach for that project. So what do you think if we as a commission can just do an unofficial show of hands asking the trustees to reconsider this?
What would that reconsideration look like? It sounds like from what I'm hearing, Jared, thank you for your synopsis, that there are limited funds. And that if we were to reconsider this assessment, that we would then be essentially robbing Peter to pay Paul. In that, we would be taking funds away from the Thompson House and reallocating them potentially to the Forest Service, which, by the way, is not, it's federal land, so we've got an issue there.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we take any money and give them to this project. My only suggestion is to ask the trustees to slow it down to get public outreach. I don't want to give them any money at all. It's Forest Service project. The US government, it already our tax dollars they're using to pay for it. So they can fend for themselves on that. I don't want to take anything away from any of our projects. I agree that the Thompson House needs to be redone. The fact that they checked only, compared it only to the National Registry. There's a state registry and there's a local registry also that could be involved with the stable. I'm going back to the stable thing. So, but I want to focus on the slowing the process, the Forest Service down to be able to get public outreach. That's all we need. Is they didn't have any public outreach. The public obviously is not in favor of this, at least the active people that show up 120 or more. And I think the trustees need to listen to their constituents a lot more. And I think we need to listen to the people that are interested enough to show up to this meeting to talk to us about it. And at least do an unofficial show of hands that we think the trustees should reconsider.
Reconsider what?
Reconsider their support for supporting the Forest Service's movement of the plans for their building. That they could move the building and not change anything in the architectural or any of the infrastructure, only the location. The hole's the same, the building's the same. They have the same, they're gonna accomplish all their same goals that they set forth to do, that their plan wants to do, to accomplish. And all they gotta do is move it off to the side and get it off of Main Street, off the sidewalk, and move it back a little bit. And we save the trees. We save the entrance into historic commercial core. And that's all I think we should be doing at the moment.
Yeah. Oh. I don't know who came first, Kim or Jared.
Go for Kim.
Kim, please. You're on mute.
Oh, I feel so special. You know, obviously what we have here is two different issues. Can we save the stable building, and can we get the Forest Service to rotate that building? Which kudos to the people that came up with that suggestion. I love it. John, what do you think about as a next step, writing another letter to the Board of Trustees that addresses turning the building? Because in my opinion, it sounds like it's not very likely that we can save that stable building unless some private donor comes along and wants to pay for that whole thing. Because our real jewel is the Thompson House, and we have to have funds for that. But I completely agree with, what a disadvantage it is to us to have this very commercial city type building at the entrance to the town. So what if we write one more letter to the Board of Trustees that says, hey, can you help us push for them to rotate that building? And obviously the Forest Service is not going to like it because it means it's going to delay their project. But what do you guys think about that?
By all means, let's take a look at a letter as a committee. If somebody would be interested in writing the letter. I think that would be, time well spent. I know time is of the essence. I also know that the Forest Service has put together, I'm assuming, a complete proposal, coordinated structurally, with all consultants involved, any and everybody. There might be some curb and gutter there that's, a give back to town of Carbondale. I don't know that there is. But it is a buttoned up proposal that has been put out for bid, 100% construction documents.
Yeah, that's correct. So what they told us is they are out to bid. Their bid actually closed, I think, or was supposed to close a day or two before the last trustee meeting, but they delayed that to give some additional time for potential bidders to submit a bid. So I think they said they delayed it maybe 2 weeks. Don't quote me on the timeline, but it could be that bid deadline is passed now. So yes, they have a complete
Have they
packet. They're construction ready documents.
Have they so they has been out for bid? Did it go up? Where was it posted? I guess it was posted on BidNet or something.
Probably
like that.
BidNet.
Did they receive
I
proposals?
I don't know what they received or if they received anything. That's not information I have.
Okay, so
Is that information available? Just let me.
go ahead, sorry.
Is that so? When it is public record. If it's on BidNet, then all of that information should be available to the public, right?
Correct.
So could we inquire as to whether they have received been awarded a bid or a proposal? Just curious about that process and where they're at with it. Moreover, I'd say, yes, why don't we write another letter? John, it sounds like you've got
I think I got plenty of help.
solid ideas and potentially could organize those ideas in a cohesive one page.
Yeah, we could do that this weekend, I think. And we'll get it back. And what process do you want? We want to email it to you and the whole commission? Can we do this via?
Yeah.
Time is of the essence, so we don't want to wait till next month.
Well, if you want to get something drafted up, put it forward, Jared. How would you like us to move forward with, approving this without a meeting? Is that what you're proposing, John?
Yeah, because yes, because we'd have to wait a month to get it in the next meeting, and we only got a couple months to deal with this.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what the protocol would be for that. I know we've done it before, but.
yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I think just a letter to the Board of Trustees.
How's that made public?
I think it depends largely on what the context of the letter is. So I'd say at a minimum, you can draft a letter and circulate it. And depending on the content, we can see if it's something that we can move forward outside of a meeting. I would like to state, though, for the record and for your letter, the Board of Trustees did not and have not taken any position on the Forest Service development plan. What Mayor Ben said at the meeting was, we are providing a conduit for the public, and the Forest Service to have dialogue regarding the design. The trustees did not say we approve, did not say we don't approve. They don't have jurisdictional authority to approve or disapprove. We as a town, including the trustees, made comments on the design back in, what was it, 2020, 2019, something like that. And the Forest Service was receptive to those comments and made some minor tweaks to their design. I would also like to highlight that rotating the building would be against a lot of the principles that the HCC in both the development code and in the design guidelines speak about, with requiring and requesting buildings to come up to the sidewalk. And so I just want to put that out there for consideration when you guys are drafting a memo. It may be worth considering how you're going to ask them to consider this alternative design in light of some of the design principles that we have codified in our various development codes. So I don't want it to be a big discussion about what's right or wrong. I just think it could be helpful in your letter to say, here's why we think this is a better design in light of what our codes might say. So
a conduit for public information. And also, the Forest Service property is federal land. It has nothing to do, and it has does not need to abide by our town codes, our regulations, our HCC zone. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It's totally their call on what they want to build. They may have been in 2020 basing their design on what the town staff or somebody gave them. I'm curious, the 25 public comments that they have, I'd like to see those 25 public comments. I mean, are they all positive for that project, or there's some negative ones in there, or what do we know what that is?
you're more than welcome to make a freedom of information request.
Yeah. And after you read this, you're going to realize that I believe we're going to be able to legally slow them down, if not stop them for a while. So just
And again, that's up to the Board of Trustees. You guys as private
to our
citizens
lawyers.
can make comments, but you as a commission serve the Board of Trustees, and it's up to the Board of Trustees to take formal action on what the Historic Preservation Commission requests. So I just want to keep that in mind as well.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
let's not do any more. So we'll get this done this weekend, I hope.
Hey, John, let's wrap it up.
I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4. PM alternate member application review, Mark Mahoney. Is Mark here? Mark, please. How do we proceed with this? You want to give us a synopsis or?
Sure. Okay. Well, Mark contacted me a few weeks ago inquiring, I guess he's had conversations with several of the other Historic Preservation Commission members and contacted me about applying. He had a conversation with our former planner about one of the alternate positions being available, and if he was willing to take that position, and he indicated a willingness. So he submitted his application and it's in the packet for you to review, and you're welcome to ask him some questions and make a decision if you choose to.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mark. Would you like to give us a bit about yourself?
I'm a 30-year Valley resident. Spent the last 20 years in Carbondale. I live at 742 Euclid Ave. Technically, I'm not an architect. I've never taken the exam, but I've worked in architects' offices and started an office in Carbondale. My first job was up in Aspen, and it was on a historic, it was HPC site. I've also worked on a miner's cabin, restored a miner's cabin, did an addition to that. Moved a house from CRMS, the historic house, moved it up to Hell Roaring Ranch and restored it. So I have some experience being on this side of the table from the HPC people. And I also had an experience on the last 6 years working with the Board of Adjustments on a project. I think, Nick, you were there.
I was there.
For part of that, weren't you?
I guess I was.
Yeah. And it took 5 years to resolve it. And I think most people would think it was resolved in a positive fashion. And it just taught me that I think it's time to give back. I mean, I really appreciated all the work that the town staff did and the volunteers and the Board of Adjustment did. And between that and having John show up at my door with the application, threatening me, encouraging me strongly, and Eric Dowd on the other side, I would just, I think it would be good to give back to the community that I've lived in for 20 years and grown to love.
Thank you very much, Mark. Any questions for the applicant? No questions?
Mark, I'd like to just say, I know I've been in your shoes with John at my doorstep threatening.
Hey, you guys, cut it out.
I can appreciate that. When you say you've sat on the other side, was that typically in Aspen that you were dealing with historic preservation, or throughout various other communities?
It's been Aspen, Pitkin County, and actually Hell Roaring was Pitkin County also. So
Okay.
it was Susanna and Amy Guthrie. Trying to think of it. I have not done anything historic down here. We built what is now the True Nature building. That started out to be an architect's office. And we developed that, which is in HCC, but we didn't have much to do with it. That was back in 94. No, I'm sorry, 2000. And we didn't have anything to do with the HVC on that.
What's your favorite building in the purview of our area?
It's actually the house down by 3rd Street Center. It's the yellow house. It's gosh, what is the address? Does anyone else know it? It's the shingle style. Mary Frances House, yes. I'm
The old Went House, does it have that big lentil across the front, the big curve?
yes.
We know the one. Good choice.
I'm from New England, and I just love that house.
And another question is, what do you think is the most important thing that the HPC Commission should be concentrating on right now?
Well, Forest Service property. Eric and I have had a lot of talks about the language about OTR, because we both live in OTR, and one of, we were involved in a project in that, and we were very lucky to prevail in that case. And the language in the OTR was I think could be bolstered to help designers achieve the goals that HPC wants. You know, when we were doing that, I went through every house in OTR and looked at the size of the house, the size of the property, the forms of the house, how many, you know, did it break up into how many masses? And, you know, it was interesting. There was this, you could almost graph it, and at, I think it was 1,400 square feet for the building. If you got above that, every building in OTR was multiple masses. And below that, they were almost not. They were all single masses, or most of them. And I think the language could be adopted, you know, instead of just saying generally, you know, it should be consistent with the quality of construction. You could add language that would help designers say, okay, if it's this size, we could do it this way, you know, without getting into style or, you know, taste. There are other issues that are kind of more important that could be addressed in the language. And that's, I don't know if that's the most important thing, but I think it would be an interesting thing to work on.
So
Yeah.
we're focused on guidelines.
What's that?
Focused on
Mhm.
guidelines.
That would be, I mean, yeah. I mean, I would also be interested in knowing, like, how, if we have this HPC guidelines and it's voluntary, how do you incentivize the owners to do that? And your website says that you do that, but you don't say how. And it'd be interesting to know that, because, you know, if it's voluntary, you're helping the good people stay good, you know, and the good designers, you're helping them. But there are cases where people just say, I'm not going to comply with voluntary mandates. I guess there's no such thing as voluntary mandate, but so it's, you know, it's an interesting conundrum. So, I don't know if that answers your question either.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that we're doing is trying to fold in OTR into our historic guidelines.
Mhm.
So it's like form-based code, do we need to actually take off the UDC? But like, that's one of the things is cleaning up the language, making it so much easier for residents to figure out what we can infill. And if you need to remodel something, then we have everything like easy access for them. Education, like educate our residents about everything. Else?
So I'm all in favor of him because I watched him do the project right next door to him, and how he methodically went through all that and really knows OTR really well. And our next major project, I think, is dealing with design guidelines and OTR. And I think it's a great help. That's how come I hung out on his front porch for so long.
Any other questions? No questions? So I have a question. Mark, how do you balance preservation of buildings with vitality and the tendency that HPC is perceived as discriminatory in some cases?
That's not, what do you mean discriminatory?
Well, I mean, if you're preserving buildings, you're raising prices, you're pricing people out potentially. There are people who are younger, who don't necessarily talk or look like us, who may not be able to live there because of preservation. how do you envision we balance these issues? The reason I ask is because the last time we applied for a grant, that question came up.
And that's a great question. I would say by maintaining a reasonable standard in the guidelines. I can give you some examples where up in Aspen, we had to preserve the roof sheathing. We were allowed to take off the roof, we were allowed to take off the framing, but we were not allowed to take off the sheathing, which is between the framing and the roofing. And the explanation was that someday, 50 years from now, a roofer will be taking that roof off and we'll see the diagonal sheathing and we'll appreciate that. And it cost the owner an enormous amount of money for something that had no benefit to the public. So it is a great question. You know, I mean, I would consider myself in the group that can't afford to live here anymore. I couldn't afford to buy here anymore. And I think just being reasonable in your guidelines and not I don't know.
You don't need to have an answer to this question. It's really, I mean, I don't know that there is an answer to
Yeah.
the question, but I think it's something that is on all of our minds. With every decision we make, it has to be taken into consideration. Vitality and what defines vitality for our historic commercial core, and by proxy potentially maybe OTR, which has got the same issue. You know, we've got to figure out this riddle somehow in a reasonable way. I'm not sure how to do it as a historic preservation commissioner. We're really struggling with this. Anyway, food for thought.
No, I mean, I've seen it, you know, and in Aspen, I was there when they started doing that last survey in the turn of the century. And the backlash of people whose houses were being put on, you know, the list, because they saw it as a kind of a taking.
Oh, the preservation list or the survey?
Yeah. Where they had a house that they could put an addition on, and then the next day they couldn't, or it would be much more expensive. And they got, you know, there were some incentives in, I think they would allow like 3% FAR or something like that.
The historic, yeah.
Yeah, but
What's that called? Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
sort of meaningless, you know. But yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah, and we were struggling with this one in particular. So I think we missed the mark on our last grant was pretty telling. You know, we did a terrific job writing it. We had a lot of help. You know, I thought it was really well put together, and that was the question that was the comment that came back. Anyhow. Any other questions, comments for the applicant? Okay. So at this point, normally my understanding is that, Mark, you're done. We don't have any, is that right? And we deliberate with him, not in the room.
If you're all in agreement, somebody could make a motion. I mean.
Yeah.
And the motion is a recommendation to the trustees to
Yes.
appoint Mark
Okay.
to the Historic Preservation Commission if you guys are.
And we do that with him not in the room, right?
Be here if he wants.
Okay. I would say it'd be appropriate for us to dismiss Mark at this point, and then we can deliberate freely as a committee. I don't know if that's even legal.
It's
CRS.
It's all televised, so he can
Okay,
watch everything, but it's your guys' call.
okay. How do you want to proceed? You guys want to put it to a vote? Want to deliberate? Do we need to deliberate? Somebody want to make a motion?
I don't need to deliberate. I'd be happy to make a motion, but if others want to deliberate, I'm happy to hold off.
I don't need to deliberate.
Let's
I don't
vote.
need to deliberate. Go ahead and make a motion.
Go
I'll
ahead.
make a motion
Okay. Motion to,
to recommend to the Board of Trustees the
The alternate.
application for Mark to join the commission
As an alternate.
as an alternate, right?
for now, that's just
Yeah.
And I'll second that.
wonderful. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? It's unanimous. Thank you very much, Mark, for your service. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's much appreciated.
Then just so you know, it probably won't go before the Board of Trustees until their second meeting in September. So I will put you on the mailing list, but you aren't like a member until after the Board of Trustees.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, we're way behind schedule here. ADU work session. This is a day.
So, we're actually one item before that.
I'm sorry.
The
We
budget.
do the budget.
So
Budget.
the Budget
Got
is
it.
a bit
Sorry.
more time sensitive, given that we're in the middle of budget season,
Okay.
so I recommend that we chat about the budget and be respectful of everyone's time, and maybe we kick the work session on ADUs to your guys' October meeting.
Yeah. I mean, I agree 100%, but I really think that we as a committee need to talk about ADUs. It's important, this is important, this is a very important matter, and it pertains directly to vitality and how we perceive that and define that.
I can assure you that delaying that conversation to October will not impact the timing of any ADU modifications moving forward. So it's
What's the date of the next meeting
for
for HC?
historic preservation.
HPC.
It is October, let me pull up the calendar. That date.
What is it?
Fifth.
I have to go pick up my mother. I won't be here, I don't think.
So why don't we maybe have a quick conversation about the budget?
Okay, let's just do it. Yeah, see what happens.
And we can see how much time we have left, and we can make a judgment call if
Okay.
people want to stay a few minutes later or not.
And I can remote in. I keep forgetting we're in the 21st century. So never mind.
So
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is. Okay, so staff, would you like to give us a quick
Okay, so as you recall, last month you had a preliminary discussion about budget priorities and goals for 2024. The priorities identified included a log cabin structure of merit survey and continuation of the plaque program funding. We also talked about the updating the design guidelines, but it's up to the HPC task force to develop something to bring back to the entire commission before that moves forward. Also a certified local government meeting was discussed, but until those opportunities come up, that's sort of just something that we can, as staff, keep on top of. So the budget for 2023 was $11,000. We have not spent much. We've spent less than 1,000 on the plaque program. We currently have 5 or 6 new plaques in the works. So that will add to that. And then I did get estimates from Susanna Reed and Ron Slottick for the log cabin structure of merit survey for next year's budget. Estimates were $34,000 to $36,000, which is expected and probably appropriate for the current climate that we're in. We can apply for a state historic fund grant to augment that, but those aren't guarantees. So that is a consideration for next year's budget. And we just recommend that you isolate, some very specific goals and associated budget needs for 2024. So Jared can continue to walk that process forward.
And then the only thing I'd like to add is Eric Dowd did send you all an email. Just wanted to make sure that was included in the record. He isn't here, obviously, but he did want to recommend as part of the budget conversation to utilize any of the HPC's funding that is not used for the plaque program if we're able to secure a consultant to do a next step for historic survey in this budget sequence. He also suggests that monies be earmarked for moving the stables building, and then said where that remains to be an open question. His choices were Sopris Park, Rodeo Grounds, and then Orchard Park at RVR. So I just want to make sure that got entered into the record. We did include in a preliminary budget that needed to be submitted $36,000 based off what we had heard back from on the log cabin structure merit surveys. So we did kind of put a placeholder in there, but based on the outcome of this meeting and any formal request to the Board of Trustees, it is just kind of more of a placeholder. So just want to let you know about that.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
What happens to the money if we earmark money for the stable, and we're not able to use it? What happens to that money? Does that go back into the general budget?
Correct.
So if we do get the $36,000, that one could be pertain to a matching grant if we end up going for a grant that needs the matching side.
Correct.
Which still isn't enough money to do a survey. Matching grant wouldn't be enough.
Well, if we get a grant,
it'd be
then we
much.
need to like match it to whatever their percentage of it could be.
So in light of what happened this year with the request for the design guidelines update, we didn't want to put in a request for funding for this group that was contingent upon receiving a grant to do any work. And so we felt, or at least I felt, that it was important to at least request full funding of the structure merit survey. And if we get a request, or if we get a grant to assist with that, that would be additional money for other endeavors, potentially pursue the design guidelines or do something else with that. But I didn't want to have 2 years in a row that something that you guys deem is important not being able to be completed because it's contingent upon receiving a grant.
Yeah, not to mention if we get the grant for that, then we would have to deliver on it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And it's
like,
only a recommendation, so that's potentially problematic.
Mhm.
I think it's better to actually have that full funding so that in case we actually get a grant, then we can use portion of that to matching, and then we'll have extra money to figure out what else that we need to do this next year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I mean, I think this short list that staff put together is spot on. Item number 1, item number 2. And that would be realistic. It's a realistic goal. I do agree also that, pursuing a grant, given staff's, I know how busy staff is these days, and the idea of doing, tacking on another who knows how much work you know better than anybody, but is a tall order. But if staff is willing and able, we would be very grateful
Mhm.
for that work. I don't know I don't know how we're going to address this question, same question, but it seems like we've had success in the past with grants for surveys specifically.
I think that the State Historic Fund grant, you would probably have maybe better luck
Okay.
than the Certified Local Government grant.
Mhm.
I mean, they're two different pots of money, so I can definitely review the State Historic Fund grant guidelines and initiate that conversation and get a sense from, the State Historic Fund staff what our chances would be.
So
you know,
try to
what their
find something
goals
like
are.
April, May
Yeah.
to go for. That way we can have a survey start out like in June or July or something like that.
Potentially, I think we'd have to look at when the mini grants
Mhm.
application deadlines are and better understand that. We just wanted to make sure that we were helping you guys pursue those budget requests that you felt were most important.
Yeah.
And so if you disagree with any of this, speak now.
I don't disagree. I think this is number one, number two on the list, especially given where we're at. This is realistic, and these are good goals we've had success with in the past.
Mhm.
It's achievable.
I like the two staff recommendations as well.
Okay,
So I think next steps then we would
identify some grants.
well, we can identify the grants and we can look a little more, so at a future meeting, we can come back with some additional details on the mini grant. And see what that option is, and maybe the CLG grant, and take a look at a couple different options, but more pressing is I can work with you, Nick, and we can put together a formal letter from the Historic Preservation to Commission to the Board of Trustees, just to make your formal request. And I think that would help with the next steps on the budget.
Please, give me a call.
Seems like we should aim for trying to find any grant at the beginning of the next year.
Mhm.
So that we can put an RFP out for the survey.
Certainly. And, knowing that there's specific people who have worked with us, we could just reach out and try to get some quotes like we've done. But I think it will be, what would help us is maybe further defining exactly what that scope is, to help give both Tatanka and Susanna Reed the same playbook, which they're bidding off of.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, any more questions, comments on item number 5, goals and budget? Okay, how do we want to handle item number 6, ADU work session? This is a big item. It's got, multi-layers. Do we want to table it for the next meeting? Does that make sense, or should we dive in? Does staff want to give us a summary just so that we can kind of mull over it over this, during September? And
What was our agenda for next month too?
I don't know.
No. Did we have anything that we were planning to talk about next month?
I don't really think we have anything upcoming. No courtesy reviews as far as I know. We don't have any large planning projects that would require. So it's pretty wide open.
So maybe I could just ask, these ADUs. I don't want to crack it wide open, but I'm just wondering, what is the Historic Preservation Commission's purview with regard to ADUs and OTR?
Mhm. So
How can we be helpful?
So that's kind of the reason for this coming to this group. So as I put in the memo, we've had a work session with the Board of Trustees and the Planning Commission And the Board of Trustees, as you can see on the first page of the staff report, had, about 8 overarching goals that they really wanted this process to look at. And they didn't say it's going to address every single one of these, but they at least wanted to make sure that we were considering these with this overarching goal of expanding opportunities to add ADUs within town. ADUs, for the record, accessory dwelling units. And then at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, they kind of discussed those. They also discussed, some more of the planning related issues, density, how these are going to fit into the larger community, how they're going to address affordable housing or short-term rentals, dealing with kind of size issues and how they relate to the primary structure. And so, and then certainly reviewing the process, because a lot of the process that exists today is in the realm of the Planning and Zoning Commission, requiring a site plan that the Planning and Zoning Commission reviews, and depending on the zone district, requiring a conditional or special use permit just to have an ADU. And so my hope with this conversation was to present all the same information that we presented to both other boards. So everyone has all of the same information, but really help focus this conversation on what's important to the Historic Preservation Commission. And from what I've heard at previous meetings is some of the issues that are of high importance to this group is how ADUs are addressed in OTR. OTR in our current codes really put ADUs out into their own specific regulations. They don't have the same level of ability to be attached or detached. They don't have the same review process. And so one thing that I heard at both of the other groups was, how can we make the process be aligned for all ADUs, regardless of zone districts? But also, how do we respect that an ADU on a property or adjacent to a property that has a structure of merit or a structure of historical significance? How do we make sure that that design and that dwelling unit is considering that relationship? And so, I think part of what I was hoping to get out of this is, one, just present, here are the regulations that we have. So we can kind of break down some of the maybe misinformation about what regulations exist on ADUs versus what perceptions are. And then really kind of get some initial thoughts and feedbacks. What are high level goals that this commission has for ADUs? Not necessarily getting into every specific or every use case, because from a process standpoint, any recommended regulation changes will come back to this group for a formal review. And so this is just a very early looking for feedback so that staff, as we work on these, have some thoughts in our minds about what the community has as overarching goals, or what those pinch points and pain points and or what the non-negotiables are for the community. And so that was kind of the goal. And then from a process standpoint, the reason why I say we could discuss this again in October at the next meeting is because I don't anticipate these regulations moving forward between now and then. The second half of this month with some of our staffing changes is very tight. So if we want this to be kind of a, let's think about it and let's have a more in-depth conversation at the next meeting, I'm more than happy to do that. But I do agree with you. I do think it's important to have this commission's input on these regulations, not just townwide, or not just focus on the OTR, but townwide as a whole, especially as we embark on things like potentially a log cabin survey where not all log cabins are an HCC or OTR. So just some general thoughts, if that helps.
That's very helpful. I, for one, I would benefit from just an education, like
Mhm.
you're saying, on, regulations in OTR in particular. And that would be very helpful to
Mhm.
me to better understand, the box that we're put into currently, or the parameters that we're working within. That's probably a better way of putting it, but
Mhm.
so, yeah, the educational component, I think, is everything you said, and
Yeah.
education.
Yeah. So, I know it's 7:20.
Yeah.
I want to be respectful of all your guys' time. I'm happy to do a very quick synopsis if you want, or I'm happy to kick this to the next meeting and do a more thorough presentation to you guys. I kind of leave it up to you all to let me know what you think is preferred.
I would prefer to kick it to the next meeting. It doesn't sound like we have anything on the agenda, and this is probably worth an entire meeting's time.
Okay.
That's my vote.
And have everybody here, hopefully.
And have more people, maybe. Yeah, that
Like
too.
Jess and Eric would be helpful for this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Mark.
And Mark, yes. Cool. Oh, go ahead.
Like throw a little bit in here, of course. So I attended both the trustees and the P and Z meetings when they discussed this during their work sessions. And I'm heavily involved with the OTR regulations for ADUs. And I've kind of come up with some basic bullet points that I would like to see done. We don't really, I'm throwing these out for you now so that we can keep these in mind as we discuss it. And I'm all for doing a full meeting next month to discuss this. But basically kind of dealing with the eight points that the trustees came up with, that I feel that in OTR, all the zoning regulations concerning ADUs need to be equal throughout the entire zone, all the zone districts, instead of singling out one zone district, making it more restrictive than the others. I think each zone district all the zone districts should be equal.
So we should be the same as RHD? Or
As-
RMD?
Pardon?
So we should have, OTR should have the same restrictions as residential high density, residential low density.
Yeah, or at least low density.
Okay, or all are the same? Okay, or not? RMD, HCC, CT, MU.
Depends
So-
on what the current property is, like the square footage.
Yeah. So
Uh-huh,
based on
square footage, okay.
based on the zone district, so RHD doesn't permit
Got it.
ADUs because it's intended to be a multifamily district. So I think what John's saying is in those districts where you have single family residences,
Yeah,
have the ADU regulations be consistent between those zone
Right.
districts.
The similar
Right.
ones, yeah.
Some
So
residential
OTR and
districts.
low density is very similar.
yeah, I don't see any reason why OTR should not be able to do a detached or an attached behind any age home as opposed to just the historically significant ones. I do think that an ADU needs to be respective if it's right next door to an historic building. And, more or less follow the same kind of style that older building has.
And it
But-
would simplify it too.
Pardon?
Simplify it.
Yeah.
It's like,
And just kind of running through my bullet points real quick so that it doesn't take all that long. I feel there should be a one bedroom only. Old ADUs should be only for one bedroom,
Yeah.
and therefore one parking space per one bedroom. And also, I'm all for making the minimum size a little smaller. I think 200 square feet is totally fine as opposed to 300. And I think we should raise the maximum amount to be 1/3 of the primary residence square footage as opposed to putting a specific number on it, just to be able to kind of have it fit in with the primary that's there. And
If you're getting down to 200 square feet, you're basically putting a tiny house back there.
Yeah, well, let's not, I don't really want to crack this nut.
yeah, I don't want to get into the weeds. I'm just
We're
throwing
getting
my,
into the weeds right now.
well, I'm just putting out bullet
You're,
points.
you're getting into the weeds.
And, okay,
So let's wrap it up.
yeah, all right,
Thank you. Let's keep this on schedule, okay? We're already a half
Alright.
hour over. Okay? What do you say? Or not? Are we gonna open this up and have another hour-long conversation?
no, we're gonna do it next month.
Oh, okay. Okay,
But those are just examples that you want to talk about next month.
he's hitting all his bullet
Yeah.
points on what he wants to change, or his recommendations to.
Yeah, I was just
What?
putting them out, that's something for you to think about as you're going through it.
I read the packet. I have my own opinions. Let's
Move it on.
So quickly, on staff updates. So as you guys can see, you're unfortunately having to slum it with myself. Kelly, as you saw in the email, has moved on from the town of Carbondale. We're certainly disappointed to lose her. She was a huge asset and did a ton of great work for the town here in the last 6 months that she was here. So really, really sad to lose her, but we have posted for a planner 1, planner 2 position. So if you know people looking to make a move or break into the planning world, feel free to send them my way or refer them to our town's website for the job description. Other than that, I think that's about it. I think moving forward, Kay and I will probably do a lot of the heavy lifting with this group. So expect things to take maybe a bit longer. But yeah, pestering myself always helps me get stuff done. So don't hesitate if I'm not responding to something to just put a bug in my ear. So yeah, hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of a staff update.
Excellent.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else kind of town wise that.
If you are not aware, the tagger hit the Rebecca Lodge with some pretty significant paint on the inside where the Friendship Park is. So I do believe that they apprehended the person
Some
and
graffiti somewhere.
it's massive.
Yeah, the town has been hit
Massive.
with a significant amount of graffiti in recent times, not just Carbondale, but Glenwood as well.
Yeah.
But yes, I believe they do have a suspect
So
under questioning.
Okay.
unfortunate because it's going to take a lot of work and be quite expensive for them
Yeah.
to take that graffiti off those walls. So
There goes our survey budget.
You have some elbow grease you want to volunteer. I'm sure they would gladly take it.
Maybe it's time to pin a mural over there.
maybe not.
Okay, thank you for that staff report. Thank you for the update. Item 8, adjournment. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Okay,
Adjourn.
meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much. Comments are very helpful, very, very valuable. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Kim.
Love you guys. Good work.
Love you.
Love you.